Hey everybody, welcome to today's video. As always, it is so awesome to see you. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I have been on a quest the better part of this last year for guitar tone. Specifically, I have been researching guitar amps, and I have been watching a fair amount of gear reviews online, and I was watching one YouTuber play through his amp, and he played this riff, and I went, oh my gosh, what is that? That is cool. And I noticed in his description that he listed all of the song names by the riffs that he was playing. And so I located that particular one, and it said Atomic Playboys. And I went, I'm not familiar with that. So I did a Google search on it, and come to find out, it was an album that was done by Steve Stevens. And I went, oh my gosh, I have that album. I admit I was a bit embarrassed by forgetting I actually had this CD. And it gave me an idea. Well, if I forgot about this CD, then I have probably forgotten about many other CDs as well. I have a pretty good collection of CDs from the 1980s in that era, and I thought, well, why not pick a CD and then ask yourself, why did you buy this? What made you purchase this one? And how did you feel about it? What were your feelings like when you heard it way back then? Was it in rotation? Did you like it? Did you not like it? And then to listen to it anew with fresh ears. Back then, I was only a drummer, and so I was pretty much, listening to anything through drumming ears. But, today I play other instruments. I'm a songwriter. I have a recording studio. My perspective is now much changed. So it would be interesting to go back and take a listen to these to see, have they aged well? Do I like them better? Do I like them worse? How are things going on with this? So that's the whole premise for this Rating the CD Vault series. One thing I would like to mention, I would love to play clips of the songs, but unfortunately, I cannot due to copyright restrictions. So let's talk a little bit about our featured artist today, Mr. Steve Stevens. He's predominantly known as the guitarist for Billy Idol and has played with Billy Idol for many, many years. I remember, and I'm dating myself now, but I remember when Billy Idol was a new artist. And if I recall, the first video that I saw of Billy's was White Wedding. And I remember two things about that video or the song. The first was some really pretty women in skin-tight leather in that video. Hey, I was a teenage boy, cut me some slack. And then the second thing was the guitar parts. I was drawn to the guitar parts, especially the guitar part during the verses, which had just this real cool rhythmic punch to it, and had that in the back of my mind. Billy would then release his second LP, which was Rebel Yell. And I went ahead and bought that one. And I'm so glad I did, because that is, I love that album. I love it from start to finish. And one of the things that makes it for me is Stevens playing. He just added so much punch and panache to that whole thing. And a great example is the song Eyes Without a Face, which when we first heard it, was this kind of moody type of tune. And then Steve kicks in with this really rhythmic, hard rockin' middle section. And everybody was like, whoa. And even then, back then, I was thinking, my gosh, does that guitar or guitarist sound awesome. Just so good. Stevens also won a Grammy for the song Top Gun Anthem, which was in the movie Top Gun. He's also played with Michael Jackson. He's played with Vince Neil of Motley Crue. He's also played with Terry Bozzio and Tony Levin in a project of theirs. And I have that CD. And it's going to be interesting to go back and to listen to that and perhaps do a review on that one. So one quick side story here. This comes compliments of guitarist Steve Vai, who recorded on David Lee Roth's solo CD, Eat 'Em and Smile. This was Roth's first CD after he and Van Halen had split up. And I remember when I heard the first single from that album, which was called Yankee Rose, and I remember just being enamored with the guitar part. You know, of course, Vai sounded incredible himself, but the tone that he got was so good. Well, Vai tells the story that when he first went to record the album, he was a Carvin amplifier endorser. And so, of course, he brought all of his Carvin amps. Well, it became apparent pretty quickly that these amps were not the right vibe for what they were shooting for on this album. And Vai wasn't exactly sure what he was going to do. I guess Steve Stevens was recording next door, and so Vai and Stevens got to talking, and Stevens said, "Oh, well, if you want, you can borrow my Marshall Plexi that I used for all of the Billy Idol stuff." Well, no wonder it sounded so familiar and so good. It was Steve Stevens' amp. Steve Stevens has definitely become one of my favorite guitarists, definitely in my top 10 to be sure. So, on to the CD. Now, I'm going to read part of this because there's no way that I'm going to spend all this time memorizing this, so you'll have to forgive me on this. But the album is called Steve Stevens' Atomic Playboys. It was released in 1989 by Warner Brother Records. It was produced by Beau Hill and Steve Stevens. They co-produced it. So if Hill sounds familiar, he did a lot of the 80s big stars like Rat, Alice Cooper, Kix, Warrant, Europe, and Winger. Incidentally, I just saw a quote by Kip Winger on his Facebook page, who was standing with Steve Stevens. Evidently, they were sharing a bill or something. And this is a quote directly from Kip, who said, "One of the most musically gifted guitar virtuosos and musicians of all time." End of quote. Now, if you don't know anything about Kip Winger beyond the pretty boy stuff of the 80s, you need to dig a little further. This guy is a respected musician and a classical artist to boot. So coming from him, serious high praise. All right, the executive producer of this album is Ted Templeman. He might sound familiar because he worked with Van Halen, also the Doobie Brothers. It was mastered by Ted Jensen, who mastered projects by the Eagles, Billy Joel, the Talking Heads, Green Day, Alice in Chains, and James Taylor, among others. So Atomic Playboys was Stevens' first solo album outside of Billy Idol. Atomic Playboys is the name also of the backing band. It reached 119 on the US Billboard 200 chart. So I went to my CD collection and I happened to find it. And here is what I remember about that time frame. I remember being excited about purchasing it. I do remember being disappointed when I listened to it. And here's why. I was expecting, actually hoping for Rebel Yell 2. I loved Rebel Yell so much, I wanted more of the same, and this was clearly a different project. I didn't have it in rotation for very long. I did give it a chance. And the other thing that I do remember about it was a flamenco song. So I decided to go ahead and give the CD a listen for a number of weeks. And here is a rundown of each song with a quick blurb about each. All right, once more, you'll have to forgive me for using notes on this, or it's just way too much to memorize. But the very first track is actually Atomic Playboys. This was the lead single. The one thing that stood out above all, as I mentioned earlier, was that guitar riff. Such a cool riff in my mind. The tone, the production, this whole thing attracted me to buy the CD. Number 2, the power of suggestion. So this, I distinctly remember listening to it and hearing a horn section. And I was like, horns? Steve, WTF, man? Horns? But yeah, a horn section. Number 3 was Action. This was a cover song by the band The Sweet. So if you like The Sweet, then you may like this, the cover of Action. The 4th song is Desperate Heart. This was it was prerequisite to have an 80s ballad. And so the 4th song was the slot for the ballad. One notable thing on here is that Anton Fig, famous drummer who played with David Letterman for a number of years and Ace Frehley and stuff, Anton played on this particular song. Number 5, Soul on Ice. So this was, for me, where the album kind of kicked off. It was a fast rocker and had a much bigger energy from this point on. Number 6, Crackdown. This could have been from Billy Idol, right? Billy could have sung this one. It also had stereotypical 80s, massively layered vocals, scream in the chorus, it definitely screams 80s through and through. Speaking of 80s through and through, let's talk about track number 7, which is Pet the Hot Kitty. So, yeah, it is what it sounds like. I do really like the main guitar riff on this one, though, and also the chord sequence of the solo itself. It's a cool tune. I dig this one. Number 8 is called Evening Eye. And again, this was another one of those where, it kind of took us in left field. This was more of a jazzy, moody song. It also had horns, a synth bass, and did have a big guitar middle section, and another one of these where Anton Fig played on the song. He played on 2 of the tracks on that, and I think it was Tommy Thayer, the drummer for Billy Idol, who played on the rest of the tracks. Number 9, Woman of 1,000 Years. So this is an interesting one because it's the only one that Steve Stevens sings lead vocals on. And I really liked his vocals. I don't know why he didn't want to do lead vocals for the rest of the album. But maybe he just wanted to focus on guitar. I don't know. It's a mid-tempo rocker and another one of those with big background vocals. Number 10 is Run Across Desert Sands. And this was the flamenco song that I remember. So one of the things that separated Stevens from a slew of other 80s guitar gunslingers is that Stevens had studied flamenco guitar. And that really did kind of differentiate him from some of the others. And this definitely shows off his guitar chops, no doubt. Number 11, the last song in the album, was called Slipping Into Fiction. And yeah, they ended with a rocker, and one notable thing on this is in the middle section, they kind of went into this halftime groove and just a very cool solo section with that. I would also add, and I didn't know this, but there was an additional bonus track that I think was on the import release, which was called Warm Female. Yes, this bonus track was remastered in 2013. It's not a bad tune. It has some good energy, but one can see maybe why they didn't put it on with the rest of the album. Here's the thing though, even though I can't play clips of these particular songs because of the copyright reasons, I will let you know that you can look up any of these songs on YouTube and they have the full rendition there. So I hope that you will listen to some of them or all of them or none of them if you're so desire. But man, give the album a listen for sure. So the pros of the album for me, I would definitely say Steve Stevens himself. The man just sounded awesome. Great tone, envious of that tone. And, he really brought the goods. He was all over the place. And then there's the production I really appreciated. This was by Beau Hill. And, having like some of his other artists that he produced, I have grown to appreciate his production skills in the studio. He definitely brings the best out of artists, and I think the production still holds up. Maybe not so much the 80s chorus shouts and whatnot, but I'm just talking about as a producer and engineer. Sonically, it all sounds really good. I liked the songwriting. I thought that the songs were pretty solid. They had some interesting twists and turns. They weren't just completely boring throughout. Not the typical 80s, dreck that you might expect from hair farmers of that era. There was also the band. He had a really solid band. They all sound great. There was a lot of variety in the music itself. Now, again, this may not have been something that I appreciated back then as a drummer, but I appreciate it now as a songwriter. I'm not sure, if this is Steve's eclectic style or if he just really branched out or whatever, but I really appreciated the variety of songs this go around. And lastly, I would say that the whole energy of the album. I love energetic albums, and this was one of them. So kudos to him for that. The question remains, who is this album for in today's world? And the answer to that would be anybody who is into guitar-centric albums of the 1980s. Stevens really brings the goods on this front. It is a rocker through and through. Billy Idol fans might also appreciate hearing him do some other things. Just maybe don't expect Rebel Yell #2. If there were 3 songs that I would recommend that if you want to get a taste of this album, I'd recommend listening to the whole thing, but because it is so varied. But I would say definitely listen to Atomic Playboys, the lead single. Yeah, I'm going to throw this in there, Pet the Hot Kitty. It's just that 80s era. That is an 80s song through and through. And then the third would be the flamenco tune, where you really get an idea of what Stevens can do on guitar. And that song is called Run Across Desert Sands. All right, that's it for today. The first rendition of Raiding the 80s CD Vault. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you down the road for the next one. I hope also that you are doing well, truly. Until next time, light and love to you all. Take care now. Bye.